welcome.
Thank you.
Notre Dame Television, we appreciate your appearance here this morning. Beautiful morning of USC, 2016. I'm pretty excited for the game.
Yes, you should be. Yes, you should be. USC game always has a special place in my heart because when I was here, it was in my junior year. It was the year of the Green Machine game, where we had lost one game that season, earlier in the season, and we had a great team. And Joe Montana had become quarterback, and McAfee was the tight end. Vegas Ferguson and Jerome Evans were in the backfield, and we were still in a fight for the national title. And so that game, they built a Trojan horse, and they wheeled the Trojan horse through where the tunnel where the team comes out.
Was this at Notre Dame, or was it
at Notre Dame?
Okay.
And
wow.
They opened the door of the Trojan horse, and out came the team, and it was the green jersey. They were all in the green jerseys.
Oh my gosh.
It was the green jersey game, and it was so cool. And years later, I heard Joe Resick, who was the punter, talk about that week, and Coach Dan Devine, who was the coach at the time, he had the coach of the tennis team, Coach O'Fallon, come over and tell them stories about Irish history. And Joe's like, well, this is really nice, but we're playing football. Why are we hearing about Irish history? It didn't make any sense. And so when they got dressed for warm-ups, they saw the socks with the green and gold, and they thought, well, that's cool. And then they came back from warm-ups, and they got into the locker room, and there were all these green jerseys, and they went nuts. And then they came out in the stadium, and when they came out in the green jerseys, the stadium went nuts. Southern Cal didn't have a prayer that day.
Oh my gosh.
It was a great game. So that's how the green jerseys started.
Yeah, I can't believe. So they constructed, like, how big was this Trojan horse?
It was big. I mean, it was big enough for a couple of football players to come out of it. So
oh my
God. It was this big thing that came rolling out.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So then, was there a reason why he was telling them about Irish history?
Because it was about how the Irish overcame great odds, and that they would fight against. That they had this Britain was the oppressor, and what the Irish people did to free themselves, and it was kind of like, so USC is the oppressor, and what we were going to do to free ourselves.
Okay. Yeah, what I've always found interesting is that at the same time the Irish were going through the revolution, the Fighting Irish here at Notre Dame were kind of going through similar things.
Yeah.
Like they were, I guess, like the football team, the school in general, because a lot of the students were Irish citizens. Or Irish American citizens.
Well, and I at that time, and it's kind of hard to think about, but at that time there was a lot of anti-Catholic prejudice as well. And so the university, which was always a Catholic university and proudly Catholic, there were people who were suspicious of the university because we were Catholic at the time.
Exactly.
And that, another great moment in Notre Dame history was when we went to Dublin for the Navy game in the year that we went undefeated during the regular season. And we had Mass at Dublin Castle, which was the seat of British power when Britain ruled over Ireland. And 100 years ago, you would have been, to say Mass, if you said the Rosary, you would have been thrown in jail in that place. And then here we were 100 years later saying Mass. It was extraordinary.
Yeah. They've definitely been through a lot. I was actually in Ireland this first half of this year. So I was studied abroad in the spring, and I stayed there for 2 months in the summertime. So I was there in Dublin, living there for 6 months, and it was an incredible experience, definitely.
You liked it?
Yeah, definitely. The country's small, but it was cool for me because I could travel around kind of every week and see the whole country without kind of having to, I guess, plan a lot. Like I didn't have to buy a flight or anything. I could just take a bus anywhere. So it was really nice. And the program that we have set up in Dublin is pretty amazing, to be honest. NBC actually came in and did a special. They're going to play a commercial during the Boston College game. They followed a grad student who is now teaching in Northern Ireland. She went to Notre Dame.
Oh, wow.
And now, so they did like kind of a special on her, and I think it's going to be like a 1-2 minute long commercial.
Oh, great.
So it'd be pretty incredible. I was really excited because I was in the commercial. They had me like right behind her, and there the camera. I was like, yeah. Me and my friend were in the back. Yeah, my mom's gonna be really proud of me.
Oh, she'll love it. I hope you don't end up on the cutting room floor. That's the thing. You're
That's
just
true.
never quite sure.
I know. Maybe I shouldn't be as excited as I am right now.
See if you can get the outtakes.
Yeah, there you go. I'll contact the director.
Or get the
whatever.
director's cut.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly. Well, speaking of, I guess, Catholicism here and, your trip to Dublin, I know that you being Catholic was one of your, kind of main decisions coming to Notre Dame as a student, and then what makes you come back, So I was just wondering, when you were growing up, was Notre Dame always kind of that school that you really wanted to go to,
Oh, yeah.
or were there other options or anything like that?
Well, back when I was growing up, Notre Dame was still all male. And my dad had gone to Notre Dame, and he had taught here. And then for his graduate school, he went to Harvard Business School. But my dad, for my father, Notre Dame was always home. It's where he became a man. It was his community. He was so attached to Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And I saw that, and I wanted that. I knew I wanted that. And so he would say to me, he's like, Annie, if you get into Wellesley, I'll get you a VW Beetle. That was his bribe to get me to study hard. And because at that time, for women, the Seven Sisters schools were the schools that you would go to.
Okay.
And I was totally, I thought, in my little head, I'm like going, I'm going to go convince Father Hesburgh to let me in, even if it is all guys, because I belong at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Well, as I like to say, Father Ted was much wiser than I was and beat me to it by about 4 years when he allowed women, or the university opened its doors to women, which I think was, you think back then, it was such a controversial decision.
Yeah.
And, some of the students didn't like it, and a lot of the alumni didn't like it. Those without daughters didn't like it. And a lot of the faculty didn't like it.
Really?
And, oh yeah, it was an extraordinarily controversial decision. And
Wow.
that's, see, your
I was just gonna
response
say.
is exactly the response that Father Ted would want you to have today. Because as he said, he looked at, first of all, it's Our Lady's University.
Yeah.
Secondly, they were not educating half the population. And thirdly, as he said, the place needed a little class at that point. And so when he would talk about the best decisions he ever made when he was president of the university, he said it was making Notre Dame co-ed and creating a lay board of trustees. Those were his two biggest accomplishments, two proudest accomplishments. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So, and now, when I went here, it was 4 guys to every girl, and women were an oddity, almost a curiosity on campus. Now it's just you don't even think about it.
Yeah. No, I know. Because I assume that most kids, probably everybody that goes to the school now, would have the same or similar reaction as I did. It's just incredible how much the time has changed. Like, not letting women into the university, like that doesn't even.
And so many are children of alumni, and so it's great. I mean, I love it when I go and speak to a class and somebody will come up to me and say, my mom was in your class, or my mom was in Lewis Hall, or my mom was an American Studies major and you had a class together. I just think to me, that's cool. That's what we could not imagine back then.
Yeah. I see. Yeah. My friend, actually, a good buddy of mine who I've been friends with since freshman year, he actually lived in the same room, in the same dorm as his dad did.
Cool.
Like, 20 years later or whatever, 30 years later. So I thought that was pretty incredible also. Because we're still, I'm come from alumni hall, so it's just incredible how much even not even just the fathers, but anyone who comes back will come back. On football weekends, we have people who lived in our rooms 30 years ago come back and say hello to us and that kind of thing.
Well, I was over at Alumni Hall Wednesday night over at
I think
Lisa's.
Yeah, my friend said he saw you.
Yeah.
He said hello to you.
So Father Bill brought a group of us back to his room after we had dinner. And one of them, Doug Ford, who's now a trustee emeriti, Doug lived in alumni. And it was so cool because his wife Kathy, he took Kathy down to his room and showed her all. And watching him walk around the hall and his eyes just lighting up like a little kid, it was the best.
No, it's great. It's a great place. It's a great dorm. And Father Bill is amazing as well. He's
Yeah.
a great guy.
He's funny.
Very funny. Very funny.
I love his wit.
Yeah.
Cracks me up.
But it's actually incredible how many people I've talked to, you know, alumni who talk about him or who know him
Yeah.
or have heard of him. You know, he's just that kind of guy, I guess.
Yeah, well, once you meet him, you don't forget him.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. Although he tends to forget you sometimes. He always says he's really bad with names, so he tries to. He always says when you meet him in the hallway, come up and say hello to him, and then say your name, so he just can register everything. Because I guess he's just pretty bad with that.
No, and as you get older, I'm telling you now, it gets worse. So, there are days I can't remember my own name. Oh, God.
Well, I'm sure you're very busy too.
No, that's no excuse. It's just comes with the territory.
Yeah. So what did you study here?
I studied. I did a lot of things. I came to Notre Dame as a theater arts major. I was going to sing and dance my way into the hearts of America on Broadway.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this the other day. I can't remember if I went to a class or I went to a production or something. And I remember walking across campus thinking, I'm weird, but I'm not that weird. And I'm plenty weird. And what was clear is that if you were going to be in theater, they wanted every single part of you. They wanted, there was just nothing I wanted to give every single part of me to at 17. And so I quickly decided I had to find Plan B. And Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. I think I bounced. The one thing I did know that I was destined for the College of Arts and Letters because I have no math skills.
Okay.
And back then, which was during the Carter administration, getting a liberal arts degree was basically pre-unemployment. So I took a philosophy course, the Philosophy 101 course, and Cornelius Delaney, who was chairman of the department at the time, taught the course. And he doesn't remember this, but I do remember this because I wrote we had to write papers, and he apparently read one of my papers and took an interest in me. And it's like, oh my God, somebody thinks I actually might have something to contribute intellectually here. This is a wonderful thing. Because I came and I like barely got in.
Mm-hmm.
Every woman on my section of Lewis Hall was either a valedictorian of her class or salutatorian of her class, except for one woman who I think was related to one of the four horsemen, and me. And it was like, I'm like, what am I? They brought me in to lower the curve, you know. And so when he took an interest in me, so then I decided I would be a philosophy major. Well, my mother heard that. My mother is thinking, who is going to employ my daughter as the philosophy major? And so we went on vacation, and she had just read an article about Barbara Walters. And she's like, Annie, have you ever thought about being a television news reporter? It's like, no, Mom, I was editor of my high school newspaper. I've done my journalism thing. Okay. And she said, you really should think about it because you like politics, and you could cover politics, and you like to travel, you can do that, you like to write. There's a creative aspect to it because there is sound and pictures, and she said there's a performance aspect to it because you have to stand in front of the camera, and she said, best of all, I understand they pay for your clothes. And I'm like, cha-ching, I'm there. And as I said, she was right about everything except paying for your clothes.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you just bought this jacket for the game.
Exactly. As you can see, I'm paying for my clothes. So, but it's amazing. She was absolutely right. It turned out to be, it's the only job I've ever had, being a television news reporter. I started at Channel 16. Maureen McFadden was my roommate. We lived in Castle Point. And then I went from here to St. Louis to Detroit and then to NBC. But she was not only right about me, she has 4 children. I'm the oldest of 4. 3 of the 4 are in television. My sister Mary is a correspondent for CNBC. She graduated from Notre Dame in '75. And my youngest brother Jim, who went to that school in Cambridge that has a big crimson H, he's a producer with NBC Sports in their Olympic unit.
So you guys are all over the place.
Yeah, we are. And it's fun.
Rocking the television.
It is. It's fun. It's great because every once in a while we get to work together. Mary and I, like if I covered business for a while for NBC, and it was great because we would trade information because she does business for CNBC. And Jim, for a while was a producer for the Today Show. And so he produced some of my pieces. And it's great fun to get to work with your sibling. One of the best things Jim and I did was the Today Show Goes to the Vatican a couple of years ago, and when Matt Lauer met Pope Benedict. And Jimmy was one of the producers, I was the correspondent. And I can remember the two of us, then Archbishop Dolan, who is now Cardinal Dolan of New York, he offered to say Mass for all the people at NBC who were there for the production, because he was like our tour guide for this. Yeah. And so he said, you know, if you want to go to Mass, I'll say Mass in the basement of the St. Peter's. And so it's the one day Al Roker got to sleep in. Right? No, we're all up at 7 o'clock for 7 o'clock Mass, and Jimmy and I are walking across St. Peter's Square, and I turned to him and I said, I'm like, did you ever think we would be in Rome together and working for the Today Show and going to Mass at St. Peter's?
That's incredible.
St. Peter's, and so they have all these altars in the basement of St. Peter's, and as Cardinal Dolan said, we were a chip shot away from St. Peter's tomb, which was kind of cool. Yeah.
My goodness.
It was very cool.
That sounds like an incredible opportunity.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was.
Yeah, I made it to Rome in April for Easter. I went to Easter Mass there with a couple of friends of mine, and it was an interesting weekend because it was sunny and warm for 3 of the 4 days I was there. The only day where it was cold and rainy was Sunday morning, or I guess Sunday, in the earlier half of the day, so in the morning. So my friends get to the St. Peter's Square maybe 7 a.m. For Mass at 10:30, and at about 7:30 it starts pouring. And we had to sit. We wanted to be outside, so we sat in our chair. Luckily, we got good seats. My friend actually has an Instagram picture of us about 20 feet away when the Pope was riding around in his Pope mobile. Yeah. He was waving, and he happened to look right at the camera right when she took the picture, and he was like waving, which was great. But we had to literally sit for 3.5 hours in pouring rain outside. But no, definitely a memorable experience, and I definitely want to go back. In a couple of years.
It's a very special place. But it's funny, you know, when there was a group of us that used to take Father Hesburgh out for his birthday in May. We wrote this book called Thanking Father Ted, to thank him for the gift of co-education, and on the 35th anniversary of co-education. So we took him out, this year we took him out for lunch, and one of the women said, Father Ted, if you light a candle at the Vatican and you light a candle at the grotto, which goes to God faster? Guess what he said? The grotto. It gets there much quicker. And you know, I think you go to the Vatican and it is beautiful and architecturally significant and, you know, overwhelming. But when I'm here, I always feel closer to God. I always feel there's just something about walking around the lakes or going to the grotto or just being here. There is an inherent spirituality when you're on this campus that is, it's nourishment. I mean, it's nourishment for my soul. It's nourishment for my spirit. It's extraordinary. I don't know how they do it, but they do it, and it's incredible.
So do you think any of that is attributed or attributable to Father Ted?
Oh, I think absolutely. But I think it had to be there before him. Certainly, I know my dad felt it, and he graduated in '47, and I'm sure, you know, the graduates before, and I think really you trace it back to Father Soren.
Yeah.
He created something here, something special, something unique, something that cannot be duplicated anywhere else. And we're all lucky to benefit from it.
Yeah, I'm a campus tour guide, and they want us to highlight, you know, 2 important people that are affiliated with Notre Dame, and the 2 that we say are Father Soren and Father Ted.
Yep.
So I think those are, you know, pretty obvious.
Absolutely. But I think the other thing, and I was talking to Father Tim Scully's class on leadership earlier this week, and I said the other thing that you are very blessed with here is that you have in Father Jenkins, I think, another significant leader of this university, and someone whose leadership style I find fascinating, and it's something students should study, because I think one of the remarkable things about the way Father John leads is that he listens, and listening is a very important skill that a leader must have. Nobody thinks about it. Because they always think of a leader as somebody giving the rah-rah Newt Rockney halftime speech, you know.
When one for the get better.
Exactly. But that's part of leadership, but it's not all of leadership. And I would argue hello.
Keep going.
I would argue it's not even the most important part of leadership, that you have to get buy-in from people.
Okay.
And that the way you get buy-in is to listen to people. You may not always take their advice or do what they want, but people need to be heard, because you're not going to follow somebody who doesn't listen to you, right? Or who you don't think is taking your point of view into account. And I think that's something that Father John does extraordinarily well.
Okay.
And before he makes a decision, he listens to all sides, he researches it, and then he makes the decision. The other thing that I think is remarkable about the way he makes decisions and then he's done. He moves on. He doesn't want to go back and reconsider.
Okay.
I mean, I'm one of these people. I will mull over it, think about it for years and years, and it's like, really get past it.
Yeah.
And he goes right on.
Okay. So then, kind of that listening aspect, being able to listen to others, is that a reason why you chose to pursue journalism or to be on TV? Because you're...
Oh, it was the free clothes. I think what I found, so I became an American Studies major, dropped the philosophy.
Okay.
And then my junior year, about the summer between my junior and senior year, I interned at WBC TV in Boston. And I originally wanted to be a sports reporter when I started out.
Okay.
And so I went armed with all my statistics about Notre Dame football and Notre Dame basketball and everything Notre Dame. Not that they would care in the city of Boston, but to show them that I knew what was going on. And I applied at Christmas time, and I was too late because all the sports internships were already taken up.
Okay.
And so they said, here's the deal. We have a news internship. If we gave you, if you would do 2 months in news, we'll give you a month in sports. Like, good. That's great. All I need is, I just want the experience.
Yeah.
So it was going to be a month in news, a month in sports, and a month back in news. And I started in news and just fell in love with it and did my month in sports. But at that time, women were just starting to break in as sports reporters, and it was interesting. And BZ had one of the first female sports reporters in the country. And I can remember going out on stories with her, and it was never the athletes who were jerks to her. It was the people around them. And I thought,
Okay.
if somebody's going to treat me badly because I'm a woman, it's got to be for something more than a game.
Okay.
And so I fell, I had totally fallen in love with news. And I think that's why I always tell people, whatever you're interested in, go get an internship, because it will tell you, you will
If you like
learn
it or not.
right away, because you'll see whatever it is, you'll see it for what it is.
Okay.
You won't have it, it won't be some idealized vision of it.
Yeah.
And I loved the work. I loved going out. I loved the impossibility of trying to get somebody to talk to you who doesn't want to talk to you, and finding a way of getting them to talk to you, and finding out information before anybody else did. I just loved all of that.
Yeah.
And now what I really come to appreciate about what I do is my favorite part of my job is writing. I love to write. And it's much like listening, especially in television news. Writing is often a very underappreciated skill, but your script is like if you think of your story, your script is like the skeleton of your body. And if it's weak, it doesn't matter how fabulous the pictures you have or who you interviewed or what you're trying to tell people. If that's weak, then everything else about your story is going to
Fall
be weak.
apart.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so the script is really, I would argue, the most important part of what you do. And so I just love to write.
So your kind of first experience with news journalism was in Boston then, during an internship.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about where you're from?
I'm a nomad. I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, and then we moved, in Indiana, right. And then we moved to Boston, Massachusetts, where both my parents are from, and we lived in Natick and Wellesley, which are two suburbs of Boston. And then
Okay.
we moved to Westport, Connecticut. And then we moved to Brussels, Belgium, and that's where I
Oh.
graduated from high school.
Oh,
I went to
Belgium.
an international
Wow.
school. Yeah, it was great. It was fun. And that's why the other thing I always tell students is you should go abroad. I
Mhm.
think one of the greatest experiences in my life, and that's helped shape my worldview, was being a foreigner. It makes you appreciate the
Mhm.
U.S. all that much more, but it also helps you understand how the rest of the world looks at us.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just have a different point of view.
I know one thing I noticed, I mean, when I came, I'm from California, so when I came to Notre Dame in the first place, it was, being far away from home was a big kind of factor
Yeah.
in my decision. But then when I went abroad to Ireland, the world just became so much smaller, I guess. Now Indiana to California is nothing.
Yeah.
Now it's more kind of, Europe to California is the bigger thing. And what I noticed when we went out a lot, downtown, and when we were traveling and stuff, people asked us where we were from. I had friends in Dublin from New York, South Dakota, Pittsburgh, and then me. But everyone always recognized us as Americans. It was never, oh, you're from the East Coast, you're from the West Coast. It was, you guys are all Americans. And you guys, even though you're coming from all over the country, that's how they see us.
Mhm.
And it was just definitely an interesting and, I guess, very good thing to know
Yeah.
when people, the way that people see us from the outside.
Yeah, and to this day, I mean, and I travel all over the world, but I only had one bad experience in Europe where
Mhm.
somebody was nasty to me because I was an American.
Okay.
And it was the first time I went to Europe, and we were on a train from Austria we were going back to London, and I was with my parents, and there was we had a sleeper car, and we had a berth, and he tried to sleep in our berth, and they came and kicked him out, and when they came and kicked him out, he said some ugly things about
Oh, really?
Americans, but that was it.
Yeah. I mean, I see generally people pretty very welcoming and that kind of thing to
And
Americans.
they're curious,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing is, I think it's incumbent upon us. What I worry about is that I find people to be so nice to me when I travel to other countries. I
Mhm.
think, are we this nice to people who travel to the U.S.?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure about that. And, oh, God, when you go through Kennedy Airport, and it's like, oh, my God, this is their first view of America. This is horrible. It's filthy. It's grungy.
Yeah.
And you would like it. I hope we're as nice to them as they are to us, and I worry about that.
I know. I had some pretty bad experience in JFK Airport as well.
Yeah.
So I hope that's not where everyone goes into when they
Yeah,
first come into
no.
America.
Like, okay, I need to take a shower in Purell. After. So gross.
Yeah. So does that make you bilingual?
Am I bilingual? No. As I said, my French improves with the amount of red wine I drink. But no, I learned. I mean, I can speak French. I can get along.
Okay.
I would never trust my translation skills. And now it's very funny. I've had the opportunity 3 times to be on the papal plane with Pope Francis when
Oh my
he
God.
travels around the world. So I've been
Wow.
I've been to Rio with him. I went to South Korea with him, and I just got back from Cuba and the U.S. And so his English is not very good. He feels very comfortable. He speaks fluently Italian and Spanish. Well, I would like to tell you I had a gift for languages. I don't, and it is the greatest disappointment in my life because, and I'm so desperate to talk to him. So I'm always trying to speak Italian to him or to speak Spanish to him, and he just laughs at me, and
no.
as he should.
The Pope's
because-
making fun of you.
Exactly, getting dissed by the Pope. No, because he can see I'm trying so hard to talk to him,
Wow.
and so this time in my very bad Spanish, I asked him, what was he most curious about the United States, and so he does this. The people, and he said the people in English. It's like the two of us are trying to communicate.
Yeah.
The language barrier is so great. But, so that's, oh God, I wish I had language skills. And I just don't. I don't. I try very hard, but it's not natural for me.
Yeah, that makes
Some
sense.
people can speak 6 and 7 languages, and that's not me.
Yeah, I think.
If I'm good with English, I'm feeling pretty strong about my day.
Yeah, I think the key is to kind of, I guess, get in and immerse yourself and actually just be there with fluent speakers all the time, which
That's
is
what-
tough to do, you know.
Yeah, I wish NBC would just let me go over to Italy and live there for 6 months.
I'm sure they would.
Letting me live in Rome for 6 months and learn Italian would be really.
Yeah, you go visit the Pope every week and
Except
say hello.
They haven't bought that yet, so I'm working on it.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a unique relationship. I mean, the way you guys kind of interact, I know that it's not as, you know, you don't use your words as much, but I feel like kind of being able to interact and attempting to kind of have those conversations without being able to speak. I feel like that, you know, really kind of makes an interesting relationship.
What you learn is how we communicate with so much more than words, honestly.
Exactly.
Is that, you know, you communicate with your facial expressions, your hands, all different, your eyes, all different ways. And I think what's really interesting now about Pope Francis, as we watch him lead the Catholic Church, is, you know, that we often go back to a mantra that's attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, his namesake, and that is, you know, preach often, when necessary, use words. And I think that's what you see with him, is it's not so much the words he says, it is what he does. And I think he is showing the world that it is possible to live a life of faith. You don't have to, there isn't like this incredible list of rules that you have to follow. You follow the basic rule, which is the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I feel so lucky to be able to cover someone like that, because you can see the impact he is having on the world. I mean, South Korea, it's only about 10% Catholic, and yet more than 1 million people came to celebrate Mass with him in Seoul. When he was in the United States, I thought he would get a warm and, you know, reception in the U.S. I never thought it would be anything like it was. I mean, just sort of this outpouring of joy and happiness, and people wanting to associate with him, people wanting, even if all they could do was get a glimpse of him. And I think that shows you that in our world today, it's two things. One, they recognize when somebody is being authentic, and he is. I think that's his hallmark. Yeah. And two, I think there is this great spiritual hunger in the world, in the U.S. And you know, he was surprised. I think he liked the United States very much, and he said he was surprised by how prayerful people were. You know, I think it's easy to think of us as a society, because we're the world's superpower. That we are just, you know, we're a bunch of people who do nothing but spend money and buy and buy things and do all of that. We do that, but there is a very strong faith component to our country.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, so I guess that concludes time for my questions. I think we have a little bit of time to open it up for you guys. You guys want to ask 1 or 2 questions for her? I don't know. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Where were you born in Indianapolis?
St. Vincent's Hospital.
Oh, I was wondering about this. Yeah, that's I'll start another question.
Yep.
So you were one of the first women to be, I guess, were you the first woman?
No, we were the 4th class of women to go all the way through, all 4 years.
Not even Notre Dame. I'm talking about NBC.
Oh, no. There were plenty of women there before me. Yeah.
Right, but were you the first woman to be chief correspondent, environmental correspondent?
Well, it's the first time anybody's been a chief environmental correspondent.
So you made the position for yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. But I was the first woman to be the chief financial correspondent at NBC. There was Irving R. Levine. He used to wear a bow tie.
Yeah.
And he was based in Rome. He was the Rome bureau chief at one point, and then he came back and did primarily economic news. And then Mike Jensen, who for years had been a newspaper reporter at the Boston Herald, he was the chief financial correspondent, and he was just a wonderful man. And then he retired, and so I did some business news, and then they said, well, now that you've done all business news for 3 years, would you like the title? And I said, sure. Why not?
So you were heavily involved in Katrina, right?
I went to New Orleans. I went down a week after the hurricane hit. And it was funny, you know, I had been to New Orleans many times when we played in the Sugar Bowl in 1980, I think. And I was down there, and I had been down for various things. And it's like, I think, you know, Bourbon Street is great when you're 22 and 23, and then, like, once you hit 25 or 26, like, I'm not really interested in that anymore. So I had, you know, so New Orleans is fine. So I go down for Katrina, and I fell in love with that city all over again, because they took one of the hardest, it was just a knockout punch that the city, as we all saw, was destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
But they came back, and their spirit and their resilience is just something I love. And so then I went down there, and I think I was there for about a week, and we had, when I got down there, NBC had brought in trailers for us to live in. We called it Peacock Manor, because we took over, they had all these trailers in the parking lot of WDSU, which is the NBC affiliate in New Orleans. And, you know, it was us, and there weren't a lot of people around, and there was all kinds of debris and, you know, stuff around, and it was heartbreaking to see. There wasn't power. They brought in some a cooking crew from Alabama to cook for us,
Wow.
because stores weren't open. It was the way you had never seen an American city before. And then 5 years later, I went down and covered the BP oil spill, which happened off the coast of Louisiana, and I lived for 5 months in Venice, Louisiana, which is the southernmost point, Louisiana. I spent a month on a houseboat. And
Wow.
then for 4 months I lived in a fishing camp, and I said,
Wow.
if I ever see another ceramic fish, I'll scream. But it was a wonderful place to be. I love the people of southern Louisiana, and they showed me this beautiful part of the country that I never would have seen, because I'm not a fisherman, I'm not a birder, and I never would have seen it. And it's a very sad story, difficult story, because people's livelihoods were taken away for a time and truly changed. But it was a fascinating story. People were great. I got to learn about the engineering of how you know, drill an oil well, and how you get all the oil out from underneath the sea, and it was great. It was great in that sense. Yes.
So how did you get the environmental correspondent position?
By default. No, which is really true. As I said, I had been the chief financial correspondent, and we have, in the NBC family, there's CNBC, which is the business cable channel, and they decided that the bosses at NBC decided they were going to now brand all the business news CNBC. Well, and so they were going to use CNBC talent. So that left me without a place at the table. So we tried to figure out, I like having a beat because I like responsibility. And it also gives you a little more control over your life. I mean, because you're essentially always on call, and you can be sent anywhere at any time. But if you have a beat, you know this is what you're responsible for. So I need a little bit of control. So we thought about it, and then that February, I believe it was, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN organization, came out with its report that said man was mainly responsible for global warming, and that with a high degree of certainty they knew that. And so we then decided that the environment would be a beat. And I think how much we cover it goes back and forth, but I think it is the story of our time. It really is changing. It affects, when you think about it, the environment affects every aspect of your life, where you live, what you eat, what you do for a living, and I think it's fascinating, and I love it. The first time I've ever gone camping in my life, I camped on the Greenland ice sheet, and on the Greenland ice sheet, it's you and the ice. There are no trees, there are no birds, there are no fish, there's nothing. And my producer at the time said, Annie, I've got good news and bad news for you. I said, okay, Mario, what's the good news? He said, the good news is I got you a 4 seasons tent. I said, okay. What's the bad news? There's no 4 seasons in Greenland. But it was wonderful. I mean, it was really, you know, and to be on the ice sheet and to be there, it's, you know, it's just, there were four of us, Mario and Bruce and Kurt, they were the cameraman and sound man. And then we were with some scientists, and it's just you. It's almost a really spiritual experience being there. So and it's been great. I've gone to the Amazon, I've gone to Australia, I've gone to Costa Rica, I've been to Greenland 3 times, and that's what I love. I love going places where nobody else has been, or few people have been, and I love discovery, and I like adventure.
I'm jealous of you.
Yeah.
You've been everywhere.
No, it's been fun. It is, and it still is fun.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it sounds like you have faced some challenges as a woman trying to break into what was a male-dominated industry. So do you have any advice for women specifically who want to work in a field that can be so harsh and competitive?
Well, I think the most important thing is, first of all, be yourself, be prepared, and it is so much better today for you. You will have so many more opportunities. When I was breaking into the industry, a lot of times there was the woman's position. There would be a spot for one of us. Now, I don't think. I get to cover anything a man could cover, and it's gotten much better. It used to be the one thing I knew I didn't want to do was, have you ever seen the movie The China Syndrome? This is a really old movie with Jane Fonda and Jack Lemmon and Michael Douglas, and Jane Fonda played a TV news reporter in the San Diego market, and she was the woman, and she was sent to do things like cover the seal's birthday at the zoo. And I knew I didn't want to cover the seal's birthday at the zoo. That was my red line. And I never have covered the seal's birthday at the zoo. I have covered Miley Cyrus twerking, I'm sorry to say. And then Brian Williams, when he was anchor of Nightly News, Brian loves dogs. And there was a dog on YouTube who seemed to speak and say, "I love you, I love you." And I went out and interviewed Mishka, the talking husky. Oh, dear God. So it was, I'd come close to the seal's birthday, but I haven't quite gotten there. So, but the good thing is, first of all, there were no women managers back when I started. Now there are women managers. There are women cameramen. There are women directors. There are women, and it's not just my industry. It is true about most industries in the country. And I think that what we have learned as a society is that we are better at everything when we are a business that reflects our customers, and our customers are diverse, and therefore we should be diverse. When you have all voices at the table, it's 10 times better. It's just better than if you just have one kind of voice at the table. So you're going into a world where really, you've got all kinds of opportunities. But be prepared, be yourself, and be true to yourself, and you'll be totally fine. You'll be great.
Thank you for those answers. Yeah, I guess we'll
Thank you for getting up on a Saturday morning.
No, thank you. You got to be kidding me. Oh, no.
But I figured this way you can start tailgating early.